anyone for government, if you are watching this,
The smart technology can save marriages also.
actually very often people like to say that smart home is a luxury.
Maybe for some owners it's luxury items, for some it's a necessity as a safety.
It's very hard to live without it.
Not many clients are really aware of how smart home can help them.
But smart home is not easy to sell.
Yeah, I mean, like if I still have to bring a key out every day, then what's the point?
To me, it's a bit ridiculous.
How best can we design a smart home that's future-proof?
You brought up quite a good point.
Renovation isn't just about tiles and mood boards. It's about people and the personalities, as well as the stories that help make the decisions. I'm Astley Ng, aka The Designer. Join me for the Season 2 of the SIXiDER Show. Today we are joined by two guests, one an interior designer and the other one is actually a smart home specialist. So no prizes guessing what we're talking about today. Essentially smart home and together with interior design. So joining me on my extreme left is actually Eric from Koble, who is actually a smart home specialist. And then we have Tommy from Chapter 13, who's an interior design firm. So we'll give the floor to Eric right now to briefly share with us his background and the business.
Hi, I'm Eric from Koble Smart Home. So I'm a smart home specialist. We cater and design smart home systems for homeowners. So we do it via a more consultative approach. Right? We try to understand what's the family's lifestyle, who is staying in the house, or even what kind of apartment. Then we try to think of ideas of how we can make the home smart. Right? And usually we keep in mind all those considerations and work with their interior designer or electrician to make it happen. Right, so we kind of take off the load of worry how to make a smart home happen. There's a kind of ease that we are giving to homeowners.
Okay. What about Tommy?
Hi, I'm Tommy from Chapter 13 Interior. I have been in this industry for about 7 years. That's about it.
So you do ID
I do ID Basically, I do ID
So the background before we started, we were doing icebreaker discussion and I found out that Eric is actually studying IT and he mentioned that the reason why he got into this industry was largely because of some community project.
Yes, correct.
And you want to share a little bit more about that community project?
Yeah, so I'm a SMU graduate from information system, right? So in my third year of study, I was quite actively involved in IoT related projects. So IoT is Internet of Things. We were actually tasked to, come up with tech solutions to help social service workers monitor one-room flat residents, right? Because they need to understand how active they are, whether they are out and about, joining activities or programs, or sometimes when they do not have any visitors, then it's also a concern where they are alone at home, right? And then when they are home alone for a prolonged period of time, that might imply a lot of things, right? So they needed some sort of a non-invasive tech solution to monitor activities within the house itself, and that's how I got exposed to IoT, right? And back then I realized that there weren't a lot of smart home solutions available in the market.
And that's how long ago?
9-10 years ago, right? And it really requires a lot of hands-on customization for things to happen. When I did my market research, when I was year 3 in uni, I think that was 2016, right? Then I thought, why not just give it a shot, right? Because I also have that technical background. I was very confident in the kind of technologies that were available. So that's how Koble kind of got started.
You mentioned that basically the smart home was essentially like surveillance, monitoring, and it was for the welfare of the occupants, right? Would you say, Tommy, that during your understand 7-8 years that you're in the industry, right? That's actually how you know about smart home. Like typically, like my generation will probably understand smart home as more of like a luxury item. But what he just explained is like it's almost like it's like surveillance and it's for the well-being for the 老人家 and all that at home Yeah. Do you see smart home that way?
Actually, it started off, like you say, as a luxury But after further understanding more about smart home and meeting more clients out there, actually, I realized that it's also something like a safety precaution. For example, for elderlies, I believe smart home also have 4 alerts. It will act as a surveillance also lah. So maybe for some owners it's luxury items, for some it's a necessity as a safety lah.
I'm going to ask the expert here. If we are to talk about smart, right, in category, because just now we mentioned surveillance, then we talked about luxury. Definitely luxury is one of them, right? Because it's like, you don't have to go there and press a button to control something. Then that's somewhat to a certain extent a luxury. Convenience is luxury. Then we talk about surveillance, security to a certain extent. Are there more to smart home? What will be the other categories?
Yeah. Okay, so I think the encompassing umbrella that we talk about entire smart home system. So luxury covers all categories. One of it is smart lighting, air conditioner controls, right? So that's like a very basic
Comfort.
right? Part of it. Then if they want something more, right, then we go into smart drapers. So smart drapers like your blinds, your curtains. You want to take it a step further, we also have like smart windows, smart sliding doors. Then there is also like what you mentioned, the monitoring aspect. So smart surveillance. Then we talk about CCTV and whether this kind of CCTV is integrated into one single app, right? And then lastly, we need to have good networking, right, to ensure that your smart home system can run optimally and at the same time ensure that your own Wi-Fi surfing experience is not affected. Actually, very often people like to say that smart home is a luxury, but we think it's a necessity. Why do I say that? So in the past, when we do not have smartphones, right, we feel like it's 可有可无, right? But once we own a smartphone, we realize that it's an integral part of our life. And that's how we strongly feel about smart home system as well. And very often when you ask someone who has a smart home system, they will tell you that for their next house, it's very hard to live without it. Because the kind of convenience and comfort that it can bring to you is really quite significant. I think we can discuss a little bit more of like what kind of use cases there are for a smart home system. Then I think our audience will have a better understanding as to why smart home can really be useful for any profile group of audience, right? You can have a kids, you can just be 2 person with a pet, or like you are in a 3-generation family.
I think obviously when you mention IoT and then with our smart home, it kind of connects the dot lah. Or rather it makes it more accessible, largely because of smart home. But I'm not sure, especially from an interior design point of view, right? When you all go into discussion with homeowners to begin the design journey, how often you all have this topic of smart home integration? Is it a necessity that you discuss right from the very beginning, or is it an afterthought? Let's say you meet 10 clients in a week. How many of them are actually looking to smart home?
As of now, still not too many.
Why do you think
I
it's like
feel
that?
out of 10, maybe like 3 or 4, they will ask about smart home. But to truly integrate the smart home in, which will include costs, planning, then they might be reluctant to pay for it. So sometimes it's not about me trying to plan or not trying to have a smart home, but rather to plan something that suit them. Because some of the owners, they are deliberate, they know what they want. So they already upfront tell me that they want a smart home. So I'll plan accordingly to what they want. Some of them is because of understanding their lifestyle, I will propose that maybe you want to look into smart home. Still not many clients are really aware of how smart home can help them.
Do you think that this is a job that the interior designers can also play a part? Because I personally feel that, especially with IoT, and so firstly, last time is luxury related problems. People tend to associate that smart home is about like a big ticket item, and probably that has caused a bias, and people still think it's expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So then the other problem is that they would more or less treat it less. I'm not educated enough about it, and if my designer don't prepare me or tell me about it, then I'll explore it later. It's not part of my initial thoughts. Then do you think that the designer should be like trained in, and if they should be trained, how to train? Because they study design, they don't study IT.
So I think you brought up quite a good point. So at Koble, we also do induction programs with interior designer. We provide education, and very often one of the things that we discovered as to why IDs may not recommend homeowners to smart home system is because they themselves are not very familiar with it. I mean, it will reflect quite badly, right, on interior designer when customers ask certain questions to ID and they may not be able to answer, right? So the very instinctive solution is, oh, maybe you shouldn't consider smart home system. Or hey, there's this smart home vendor, you
Yeah,
can
you go direct,
directly
and then after you confirm, find us.
yeah. So that's why we understand that there is this sort of dynamic, and we also see that is kind of like our responsibility to educate interior designers as well, right? Because we work with them very closely, right? And then once we provide education, they are generally more confident. I mean, they may not be expert in smart home system, but at least they are aware. What kind of electrical requirements are needed, right? What kind of electrical costs I need to preempt my owners, right? When they plan to do, say, smart lighting or smart switches, curtains, extra power point, or smart sliding doors, right?
Tommy, would you agree with me that by and large, even though smart home and all these are very commonplace really to a certain extent, especially when you go and visit other people's friends' homes and then they say, hey, you got all this, but then they are still very resistant to change. One good example is that there'll be some customers, you tell them to change the door lock to digital lock, right? They will still be telling you, I scared like one fine day, this one spoiled, that one spoiled, then how I go in?
There will definitely be clients that are like that. But normally for the younger generations, they are more open to ideas. So I do agree with Eric that we as ID, we need to equip ourselves with the knowledge so that we can confidently propose ideas and, what are the requirements, for example, the neutral wirings, etc., before the renovation even start, so that they know the cost and what we need to do to equip themselves with a smart home.
But smart home is not easy to sell. Why I say it's not easy to sell is that normally you need to 给他们那个画面.
Yeah.
Like for example, just now I say, if I'm a deaf person, then in order to know that someone is at the door ringing, right, and they can't hear, right, there's a flashing light somewhere. Now the moment I say that, right, 我讲出一个画面了, and then people can there's a logic to this. And then the best is people have a showroom with all the smart features, all that gadgets and all that. But more often than other, maybe many of the showrooms don't integrate all this. Then for the salesman to try to 讲到有画面, it's quite challenging. And the best thing is technology keep improving. There are more and more things. Then how best can we design a smart home that's future proof? Maybe both of you can give some thoughts on that. We'll start with Tommy.
I have ever met a client that tell me about some case study overseas. I cannot remember the country, maybe it's China. One of the company shut down or something. Then those people that use their smart system got locked out of their home. They cannot access the digital lock, etc. So I think these are also real life example why people are afraid to step out of their comfort zone for a new technology.
So in terms of future proofing, there is two aspects to it, right? First is the hardware and of course the software. So in terms of hardware, is what kind of necessary preparation you have at home. Let's say if you want motorized curtain, do you have that PowerPoint there, right? And say if you do not want to install a motorized curtain at the early stage, okay, then you can tell your ID, hey, in the future I may want a motorized curtain. Prepare those necessary electrical points for me. So that's the hardware portion. Then the other aspect is the platform that you choose. And then within the smart home platform itself, there's also devices that you want it to be as interoperable as possible.
What do you mean by that?
So if I buy this device here today, and I choose platform A, right? If platform A closes down today, do I have the option to bring my device into platform B? Right? So if your device is interoperable, right, then you are in a good spot, right? Then it kind of addresses Tommy's question, concern earlier, right? Let's say this China app closes down one day, then is it possible for me to bring this device and connect onto another platform?
Can I get a better understanding of this? It's like for example, there are platforms, but for instance, Apple HomeKit can then still use some of these. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So
it's a neutral platform.
Yeah, so Apple HomeKit is a platform, right, that allows you to connect devices onto their platform, right? Or let's say our Koble app is a platform. It allows you to connect devices on the platform, right? So when we talk about device There is also different kind of protocols. You have Z-Wave, Zigbee, Bluetooth, so on and so forth. Then the question is, hey, does this platform that I'm using allow me to add different kind of product A, B, C, D, E into it? Then of course your range of scenarios or automation rule is really quite expensive. There's a lot of ways to go about it.
Okay, so I want to go back to that topic that we were talking about, the digital locks. And I just want to bring up this analogy because digital lock is the access to go into your property, right? Another thing that you have access to go into a property, let's say for example a car, is you also have your remote. They both function somewhat the same, right? If for example your car's remote control has got a battery failure, right? And then what you do is you can actually pull out the key and then you can still access your door. The same can be said for digital lock as well. But yet somehow or rather there is a bias that most people still feel that for their home, they cannot have this digital lock, or they feel that it's not something that they want. Why do you all think there's this bias?
When you access your car, right, very often it's a muscle memory to still bring along that key. Right? But for digital door lock, the selling point is always you don't have to bring your key out anymore. Right? So for a lot of users, they actually don't bring out
the spare key.
Yeah, so actually for digital door locks, they also come with a key. But once it becomes a habit, you are very used to facial recognition or fingerprint to unlock the door, you don't bring your key out anymore. Right? So I think that's where some audience or homeowners have that qualm of like, hey, whether I should still adopt a digital door lock or not. So yeah, I mean, like if I still have to bring a key out every day, then what's the point? But there's really a lot of benefits to having a digital door lock. Your entry to your house is a lot faster. You don't have to really fumble for the key, look for it to open. And even when you don't bring out your key and say battery runs flat. So actually before battery even run flat, usually there's a lot of notification and warning from the door itself, right? And even when you do not charge it, you still have emergency USB-C that can provide power charge, right, to the door lock.
But I think that if the client starts off by saying that I can have digital lock, to me it's like almost like the gateway to that they can accept smart things in the home really, like smart lighting, climate control. And we talk about like the rise of the EV revolution, right? My statistics is this, when they first came out, right, the adoption rate is about like one digit, 5%. And then within a year, right, it moved to about 20%. And probably the estimate is this year will move into about 40%, which means out on the road, with the active COE one, 40% of the cars will be actually an EV, you know. And then when you go inside EV, right, it's actually got a lot of frills and got ambience lighting, climate control, massager in the chair. There's a lot of smartness, including parking. You know, you can auto park and all that. And again, I'm going back to the bias because people can readily accept all these things that's happening in the EV, right? And same thing, inside the EV is an interior space, right? But back into the interior design of a home, right? The adoption rate is not as high, or as high as we want to. So Tommy, why do you think this is happening?
I'm actually quite the opposite. Not say that I don't like EV. I like the ambience lighting, you can even on the aircon before you reach the car. I like all this function. But I prefer to drive a petrol car than an EV car. But for my home, I definitely would want a smart home. So I'm actually quite opposite. Yeah, because my primary concern is the lithium battery in the EV car.
Okay.
Based like safety reason. Maybe, I don't know what will happen. Maybe the battery got issue, then the whole car will burn down.
Okay.
These are my concern.
But for your home, since it's not running on batteries.
Correct. Yeah.
So my take is for EV adoption there's a lot of government effort, right, to push us towards this direction. Whereas for smart home,
It's a choice thing.
it's a choice, right? I mean, anyone for government, if you are watching this, then of course, if you can support us with grants, that would be best. For smart homes, it's really a lot by word of mouth.
Or they see the 画面, the
Yeah,
benefit.
or they have seen some sort of YouTube videos before, then they realize, oh, actually this is quite cool, right? This can be potentially quite useful for me, right? Then I'll use it. Or you visited some relative or friend's house that has a smart home system, you realize, hey, wow, this is really something I want. Then, they will adopt it as well.
The catalytic moment where you suddenly decided that this is the business that you want to go into was for the fact that smart home can be used to help social causes. In this case here, surveillance for old folks.
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, right, yes, we do have indigent people. 一房一厅, they stay alone, old folks. And if they fall down, then nobody knows, somebody attends to them, right? Then they could pass on just like that. So now they have the intercom button that can immediately send a message to the civil defense. Not only that, right, basically, there are also surveillance that can track movement. So you have a daily pattern. Every day, 6 o'clock, you come out from your room, and suddenly in the CCTV, you don't come out for 2 days. So it will actually trigger alert as well. So that was what you were working on, something like that, right?
So it doesn't even need to be like CCTV.
Yeah.
So it could be
Motion.
Like, motion,
Lights,
presence,
yeah.
whether you have turned on this switch or not.
Yeah.
So these are some of the small little things that we track.
It is already not just a luxury, not just comfort, because just now we were talking about like EVs and all that, all these are aesthetics. But the reality is that they could really be very useful. And just now what we mentioned was a indigent situation, but even if you guys are affluent, right? Your parents may choose to want to stay alone. And then that's where the designer's intervention, they can go in and say, hey, why don't you put a surveillance? And then you all can track. And these solutions are readily available, but the knowledge base is not there. Consumer front as well as maybe ID front, we also need a little bit of catching up. Let's just take a hypothetical situations. If the two of you are to kind of do one show flat together, right? Tommy's going to come up with a basic design and all that. And then if you want to kind of provide this solution, right? Which target market will you choose to dress up, and then so that the large part of the population can understand?
Maybe we can split it into two categories. One is for luxury, and another is for really surveillance. I think I will do it that way. So one portion we can really cater for people that wants it for the convenience, and another one is a necessity for them.
Okay, then that's the project brief. What will be a solution?
Then my advice to Tommy is actually it can be joined into one. The best use case would probably be a 3-gen family. Because a 3-gen family, then you can talk about what kind of benefits each generation can get, right, from a smart home system.
Okay.
Right, so for elderly parents, right, so other than like CCTV monitoring, you also have emergency buttons, right, that you can place around the house for parents to, elderly to like trigger if, they fall, right, or some sort of presence sensor to detect whether they have left the room or not. For, say, a working dad and mom, right, who has kids, then we can probably use a master bedroom for some sort of scene or ambience. When they want to sleep, you can showcase, and then once you say goodnight, on the lights in the entire house will turn off, AC set to preferred temperature that they like. The windows, because we have smart windows can close by itself, right, and then the curtains will draw. When you have a baby, right, there's also very useful use case for smart home system. So for example, after you feed a baby, right, sometimes it may be with you, right, in your arm. And then it's very inconvenient to stand up, go and turn off the light. Right, but then you will disturb the baby, may cry whatsoever. So with a smart home system, you can either give a voice command, or you can just take out your phone and then just activate a scene to turn off the light, windows closed, aircon turn on. And then as the kids grow a little bit older, right, they can walk, maybe close to 3 to 5 years old. Sometimes you will place them in their own room to sleep. But in the middle of the night, they get scared, they want to go to their parents' room. Then you can have motion sensors around the house, right, to activate some sort of ambience light as they navigate towards your room. So within a 3-gen family showroom, right, you can actually showcase a lot of things.
In most cases, right, Tommy, I think like when we talk about smart home, the most 典型例子 probably will be lighting. And then I think it's also very easy to show off very quickly. Because you press one button, then the lights will dim, then go into cinema mode. Would you say that is more readily acceptable?
I think it is.
Many of the lightings can also change from yellow in terms of the color temperature, then to light color, right?
The cool white, warm white.
Yeah. So in a case where they are elderly or 3 generations staying together, old folks, again, correct me if I'm wrong, tend to prefer brighter lights because of their diminishing eyesights.
Yeah.
But then younger people prefer warmer lights. Then how? So that's where the smart bulbs are very useful to have, right? So I think that there is a really very good case for us to look at when we buy, let's say we are doing interior design, right? Instead of choosing light that's only just offering one spectrum of colors, we could actually be looking at smart lights that can actually have that. Yeah. And do you see more of that kind of customers today? Whether or not they got three gens staying together or not?
I personally feel that it's not more towards the gadgets or the devices that they buy lah, but rather the planning first. So the IDs that you consult will give you different ideas also lah. So I feel that maybe the clients should find a suitable ID that can advise properly based on their requirements lor. Equipping us with the knowledge and we can advise properly, then I feel that clients will more likely be able to accept the smart home, because if we can let them visualize how it will look like, or maybe even bring them down to experience center, then I believe they will really understand how it will help them.
But like in your typical process when you all do the design and all that, right, it's usually it's just a 3D render. It's all the aesthetics that's focused on carpentry. Right? Where do you think that you can actually throw in all the so-called smart thing inside your proposal process?
Actually, nowadays we don't just give 3D lah. We also give VR tours. Understand that the VR tours still doesn't show if the lights on or off lah. But we definitely will try our best to find like videos online to let them really understand how things work. Because some of them they maybe they have the impression that smart home is just a little bit convenience lor, you know. But actually it's much more lah, I feel.
A previous episode where we actually had a lighting specialist, he came, right? We were talking about the topic of Angmos. So Singapore design or Asian design versus the Angmo home design, right? There's very big difference. Asians tend to want to put all the lights on the ceiling, right? Whereas Angmo's Westerners, right, what they normally like to do is they want to put like that. So it's called layering. And then in layering, normally they will have what we call table lamps, chandelier, wall lamps, sconces here and there. And in the old days before smart, it's really literally you go there, switch on. Asian is because you come into a room, you press one button, plug, everything on already. But that's where bad eyesight happen, because Asian is the highest population of people wear specs. I'm one of them. And it's largely because of the light shining down and hitting our eyes, right? And flicker rate and all. But in today's context, right, again, correct me if I'm wrong, smart home actually addresses that, right?
Yeah. What you mentioned earlier on is actually circadian rhythm, right? And how it adjusts to the circadian rhythm of your body, right, throughout the entire day. Audience may not be aware is how they can actually utilize this feature on a smart home system, right? Because actually throughout the entire day, you can change your light for different use case or purpose. Maybe I can share some. When you're actively in the office or working, most ideal lighting is 4000K. But once it comes to nighttime, you don't want 4000K in your house, right? It looks very bright. So that's where you have the flexibility to change it to a 3000K. And it doesn't even need to be like I go into the app and change, right? It can be like automated. Once you turn on the switch at certain time in the daytime, it's this color. Past 7 p.m. and you turn on the switch, it's this color. It's programmed already. I share one very interesting use case, right? So we had a customer who had like white lights in his house, right? And what his concern was the lights is very bright. When it comes to 9 p.m., my kid is still very active. Yeah, because your house is still very bright, right? Your kids, they are not conditioned to say, hey, the lights are starting to get dim, I'm tired, right? So once they transit to a smart home system, it became automated.
Because genetically we are conditioned that way.
Yeah.
So when the sun sets, right, you want to...
Correct. So they actually did some setting, for example, so they did a gradual decrease in the light brightness. 8 p.m. is like 50% brightness, right? 9 p.m. is going to turn to like 10% brightness. So when the house starts to get dim, the body will react accordingly. So it's like really small little creature comfort that you will really enjoy once you have a smart home system.
I ask you a very weird question. Do you all keep aquariums?
No, I don't.
Keep
Last time.
What kind of fish?
Saltwater.
Saltwater. Okay, so I think you will know this. So a smart technology also exists in the reef aquarium system. Inside the reef aquarium, right, the certain corals requires they also want to have some kind of rhythm one. Meaning that got rain, got thunderstorms, then the flow of the water, right? The certain corals actually perform better or grow better in that kind of situation. So there are actually wave makers that can follow exactly. Let's say you program which day suddenly pretend to have storm, then the overhang light, right, will also flicker like thunder,
Right.
and then the wave will actually simulate like a thunderstorm.
Right.
And these are real one. I've also seen situations whereby very can see aquarius, right, they actually have a camera mounted on a glass cleaner. So what happens is that the glass cleaner go and clean the algae, and then at the same time, right, they can go and view the corals. Because we're mentioning all these things, right, it made me remember this story because that's surveillance, right? That's also ambient control, circadian rhythm, and then at the same time, right, all this is controlled using IoT.
Yes.
So there are people who will use this one, and personally, I also use this other two. I keep a lot of plants. So then when I travel, right, then who water my plant? No one can water my plant. So I actually have water dispensing machine that I can control remotely to disperse water. So all these smart things are readily available these days. I want to go into this one question, so I think both of you can answer very quickly. Just now I mentioned a very extreme scenario, like a fish tank goes smart and all that. Do you ever, both of you, have situations whereby you all propose a smart thing, right? Then end up it becomes like a white elephant?
So usually we don't really over propose. That's why we take a very consultative approach.
Needs analysis.
Yeah, we really understand like what's your existing lifestyle like. Then we see how the technology can complement with your lifestyle and not like force feed you. Because of our 8 years of experience, right, we may give suggestions and ideas. Because sometimes even based on your existing lifestyle, you may not be aware that, hey, wow, this kind of interesting system exists. So we'll give ideas and suggestions, right? And it depends whether you want to adopt it. If you feel that you are not ready to adopt it, then so be it. Right? Start off with something basic. So that has always been our approach.
You?
So far, no. More than often is after the renovation, then they realize that they need more. Yeah, so most of the time we propose whatever that they need. Then after they stay in and they adapt to the new environment, then they will tell me, hey, Tommy, I want to add this and that and that. Yeah.
There are people who also integrate lighting together with sound or sound system. And then they say, I want to watch a movie, then that movie and the sound, when the sound spikes, I want my lighting to also have that kind of effect. I personally had a client who did something like that and then regretted it. Is this considered smart, and then is this something that's like more like a cool gimmick and it's not really ideal?
So in my opinion, that's a cool gimmick.
Like the wave maker, the wave thing for the coral.
Or like maybe like RGB lights.
RGB lights.
Yeah, I think that's a gimmick.
Okay.
In my opinion, right?
Okay.
Because how often will you go and change different colors?
Yes.
Right? Maybe once in a while when you host guests, you show the different ambience that works. So RGB, I mean, that really works with like a very niche group of customers who really want that kind of feature.
Yeah, got DJ console one.
Yeah.
I want to ask him, got RGB customer?
Have lah, but that was a long a long time ago. Really a long time ago.
So nowadays don't have it.
Nowadays really don't have. Really don't have. Unless you're going for bohemian or like
Or game room lah.
Yeah.
So I mean, like even like game room, right? When you have like RGB running constantly, after a while it becomes distracting.
But you stick to one color and you don't change.
Yeah.
So what's the point
if you stick to one color like maybe blue,
the razor green, for
razor
instance.
green. Yeah.
Okay.
And that works Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about like providing 画面, like visual. Maybe we use the interior designer's perspective. Can you like create a case study, and then maybe Eric here, right, can, like, based on this customer profile, right, he can propose what kind of smart solutions?
Maybe a 5-room flat, young couple. We plans to have kids, have an existing dog.
5-room flat. So let's say if we have to start off with basic smart home, for example, just turning on and turning off your switch from the app or voice control, air conditioner control, controlling your heaters. So you can turn on your heater in advance before you reach home. That ballpark will be around 2005. Right? So that includes one-to-one consultation with us, liaising with your ID, and even installing all the devices and one-to-one tutorial with the homeowner. If you want to go a bit more further, smart blinds, curtains, then usually it's like per piecemeal lah, right? For each area, the additional cost. So for 5-room flat, if you were to do motorized blinds or let's say motorized curtains, right, throughout the entire house, maybe an additional 3K or so.
So the ballpark is including the hardware and the installation.
Yeah.
But how about the neutral wirings will be done by us, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So neutral wiring usually done by electrician.
One challenge that is because your proposal for this case study, in this case here, is a young couple, haven't have kids but have a dog.
Yeah.
Planning to have a kid.
Yes.
I suppose the dog is going to be alone most of the time. What about CCTV? Do you all provide solutions like feeding the dog? Or things like that, no?
Yeah. So we have pet feeders that are compatible with our system as well.
Okay.
Right. Actually, there's a lot. So I mean, if owners want to have that feature within one single app, we can do that as well. So you can even automate with temperature and humidity sensor. Right? Hey, you realize the temperature gets a little bit too hot, you want to turn on the fan for your pet, right? Or you want to atas a bit more.
Or especially the dog is like very furry. The aircon is very important for the dog.
Then you can like automate to close the window, aircon to turn on.
The typical scenario is that just now you mentioned a few things like turn on the heater, turn on the aircon before I come home. I agree to the turn on aircon before I come home. It's because Singapore is so hot, right? The turn on heater thing, maybe not very important. So hot already, right? But the thing is, but again, the typical scenario is that, this would be the normal package, but to really get the gist and the benefit of it, it's like really we must tell you our lifestyle.
Yes, correct.
We must tell you specifically all the things I hope I can do, but I cannot do, then technology must help me do.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I actually have a real life scenario lah. Like my client, they move in already. No neutral wiring at all, but they want a smart home. Is there any way that without me needing to hack anything to install the smart home?
Very real scenario.
We can educate the audience a little bit as to why neutral wires are even required for a smart switch. Right. So for conventional smart switches, right, you have a live in and then you have a live output out to the light, right? And then neutral wire exists at the light, right? So back to the circuit breaker. That's where you have the neutral wire. So conventional switch, once you turn on, power flows to the light. But for smart switch, it needs to be on standby mode. Right? So when you control from an app, it will be able to receive that information. Right? But not to worry that standby mode power consumption is not high. Right? Maybe in an entire month, in terms of utility cost, right, it's like less than 0.02 cents. So when the smart switch is on standby mode and when you do not have a neutral wire, right, there is some standby current that goes into your light. Okay? So if your light is those that is about 3 watts or so, the small current that goes into the light may trick it into thinking that, actually 有电, I have power. So visually what you see is a flickering light. Not wrong, because the light thing got power, got no power, got no power, got power, no power. So in the early days, right, to prevent this problem altogether, right, that's where they created neutral wired switch. So the smart switch itself has its own way of being on standby mode without releasing any current to the light. But there is a lot of improvements since then. I cannot say for others, but for Koble smart switch, we have designed it such that it's able to hold significant amount of the standby charge. A client can actually use maybe a 2 watt or 3 watt light and it will not flicker. So now to your question, if a client has already moved in, they do not have neutral wire, can they install smart switch or not? With our solution, that's possible.
Just now you mentioned a lot of market players like Zigbee and all that. And then at the same time, right, based on those peripherals that you can find on Taobao, Lazada and all that, they're all running on a system called Tuya. And many of these devices are pretty cheap. They've got like standby switches, smart switches that you can remote control and set timers. So they function like my aquarium system right now at the back is the lights are on off based on these systems. Are they reliable? And can we say that they are IoT? And are you guys using systems similar to that or more advanced?
Tuya, what you mentioned earlier, is what we consider a platform. right? So our Koble Smart Home system is built on top of Tuya platform as well, right? So when you purchase any Tuya or Smart Life compatible products, it can be added into our platform. In terms of purchasing from Taobao e-commerce platform, I think the very important question our audience need to have is if the power rating is suitable for Singapore use case, right? So in Singapore, usually they say, hey, our power 220 to 230
220 to
volts.
240, yeah.
But actually, no, it's not true, no.
Okay.
Sometimes it exceeds all the way to 240, 250. Even for new condo developments, especially for new HDB or condo developments, sometimes they may exceed to that sort of range. Not 24 hours, but sometimes you realize that there's that kind of spike. Then the question is, the hardware that you purchase,
Cannot handle the load.
can you handle that kind of load or not? So you may use for 1 month, 2 months, no problem, right? But over time, that kind of wear and tear will cause a strain on your hardware.
What's the impact? Fire?
Usually not really fire, right? Because they have like built-in fuse. Then you just have a switch that couldn't be used anymore.
So platform is the same, but the hardware itself is still the deciding factor. Yeah. So you cannot judge based on so-called the operating system lah. But you have to judge based on hardware and whether they are, safety mark or they fulfill the regulations in Singapore. Would you advise that smart gadgets, then like this, I shouldn't be buy online or from overseas?
We cannot say that lah. I mean, it's always like buy at your own risk. So if you value a more consultative approach, you value local support, having someone to service or answer your questions if you have any form of queries, then we are a good option lah, right? Because we have been around for 8 years or so. We have a strong technical support team as well. For a smart home system, we don't want it to be a use case where we sell you and then we say bye-bye. Right? We want you to really extract the full value of the smart home system. That's why we are very happy to answer any questions that our customers have, like even after 1 year or 2 years after they move in.
Go back to Tommy, how smart you want your home to be? Or already is your home very smart? Maybe you cite some examples.
Not really lah, but I want it to be more towards the luxury side lor, or more towards convenience. Like when I reach home, I don't need to spend unnecessary effort to off the lights, on the lights, everything automated will be nice lah.
Would you say that that's convenience or laziness to a certain extent?
I feel that smart home don't really make people lazy, but just remove unnecessary effort. I think the real question is, does it improve your lifestyle lor? If it saves you time after a long day of work, I feel that it's worth it lah.
Yourself is easier, you can figure it out what you want to improve. But to your homeowners, is that how do we even get them to be willing to open up and tell us all these things, and then for us to then say, okay, then I can propose this as well? Do you think that this is even an ID's responsibility?
I think it is, because it takes two hands to clap lah. The client itself definitely need to open up to us, but we as an ID, there are ways that we can make the client comfortable to open to us also. If you make the entire appointment like very salesy and transactional, I feel that the client also won't tell you the truth. But if you are genuinely trying to understand what they want and trying to help them explore different options out there in the market, share with them the different projects that you have, maybe you can inspire them to do something different.
It's a good point, but in the initial stage of a conversation with a designers, right? If a homeowner is actually doing shopping for designers and all that, the first phase right now is that you will know that you are in competition with a few other people. For sure, no homeowners will just go to one ID immediately unless referral. Yeah, and in those kind of situations, most of the time they'll probably be looking at the budget first. You will be thinking, do I want to propose so many things at the get-go or not?
Interesting.
Or you will propose only after you get to that stage whereby confirm
I do things a bit different. I cannot answer for the rest of the IDs lah. But for my first interaction with them, normally it's through a phone call lah. So in the phone call, if they have time, I will briefly go through their requirements and also try to understand, like, how many people are staying in the house, do you have pets, etc. So the first interaction will allow me to propose something for them. So the second meetup appointment will be a full quotation with a full plan layout. Then during that second appointment will be how we discuss things that does it make sense for me to do this for them over here? What are their considerations if I do this and that? Yeah, so I kind of make the appointment feel like an open conversation. I'm not here to close you at this stage. I'm here to try to make you comfortable and also trying to let you open up to me and let me know realistically how much are you willing to spend for the renovation. I try to make the appointment this way lah. So most of my clients they will open up to me eventually.
The situation is that we all, a large part of Singaporeans all stay in HDB flats, and it's like standard tour of duty lah. You buy a house, and very early in your life, and you have home ownership already. And the first time homeowners usually they don't think about all those needs things, right? And especially I would say, husband, wife, you stay with your mother, I stay with my mother. Then suddenly two of us come together, even figure out all your needs and wants. You probably would only be able to judge on your aesthetics. You all came to agreement to aesthetics. Probably the second home. That's where things get a little bit more heavy because you all stay together already. You also know the quite pee. Why you always don't switch off the light? Then okay lah, do a smart light, then it will auto switch off by itself lor. You know, why your aircon always every morning I wake up damn cold because you don't switch off. The aircon you can do some timing, they can turn off by itself. I realize as an occupant, as a husband, right, the smart technology can save marriages also lah, to a certain extent lah.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Yeah. So, for example, when you're sleeping, sometimes your living room light is still turned on. Some kitchen light is still turned on.
Hey, go and turn off leh.
Right. I mean, you are comfortable on your bed already. So what you just need to do is just give a voice command or just control from the app. Smart home, in my opinion, don't make people lazy, but it really gives you back the time.
Saves marriages.
Yeah, saves marriages.
Contrary to popular belief, you are already exposed to it. When you travel, right? When you go into a hotel, you get a key card. You tap, that's a smart lock. Then you put in the key card into the slot, right? It powers up the space. It powers up the space, right? And the moment you leave the room, you pull it out, it powers down the space. What it does actually is provide safety because nothing that's plugged in, whether it's approved or not approved, right, will catch fire because there's no current sent to it. So all this smart technology actually exists. In fact, if you think about it, maybe more than 20, 30 years ago. And today, it's made very accessible with technology and with our smartphones and all that already. So for all you know, right, you have already been interacting with it. It's just that you didn't see how you can bring it into your life.
Yes.
Yeah. And today we have these two gentlemen sharing with us on how to utilize it. And I hope that has basically get you guys a little bit more receptive to exploring smart home into your homes. Now we're going to move into one segment called Astley Stirs. Let's see, first question.
Not some sensitive question.
No. Won't ask your marital status. They want to ask really. Okay, have you ever had a situation where the client insists on like integration of a smart gadget that in your opinion was completely impractical 没有用的 Then but somehow after he integrate, right, you realize that 可以 useful.
There are definitely times whereby I'm not always right right? Because when I advise, it's based on my experience So
your experience, your exposure,
yes,
what you've seen.
Correct. So I don't force my customers to do what I want them to do, or rather I advise. But end of the day, I still respect their decision because end of the day it's their home. It's only my responsibility to guide them So in that case, yes I have encountered that before, and it humbles me because I'm not always right Sometimes the client, they really know what they want.
Is there like a specific scenario that you can maybe share with us?
It's a bit funny My client wanted motion sensor, but it's for the kitchen. So I disagree because to me like motion sensor is for lights all this. So actually when they tell me the reason for motion sensor is they want to monitor if their kids sneak out at night to take snacks from the fridge or this thing So
or eat poison. Somehow it is useful
Yeah, it's useful Yeah.
Okay, now your turn. What smart home trend makes you want to pull your hair out even though everyone is obsessed with it? RGB cannot say already.
The other one would be Matter, Matter protocol. But that itself has its like own range of like issues. So the news buzz is about this new protocol that's up, and then I can use it across like different platforms, so on and so forth, right? But we did our own testing, and what we realized was there is very limited product range within this protocol. And actually, for Zigbee, right, it has its own set of products and range that a lot of customers can choose from already. And Meta is actually a new protocol created by the big boys, lah, your Amazon, Apple, Google, right? And then they want to cut in it, right? That's why they come up with some sort of standardized language that, okay, if you're on board with Meta, then you can add into this platform A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But in reality, that's
Not stable.
It's not stable.
So whatever that's working right now is still Zigbee and the predecessors.
Yeah.
And whatever that they are proposing right now is still at its infancy stage.
Yes, correct. So, for example, if you're just talking about Meta switches or Meta lights, then okay, maybe it works. But once we go a step further, hey, I want blinds, curtains, various kind of sensors, then you realize that actually it's not as stable as what we thought. But like customers are very into, I want Meta protocol, I want Meta, yeah.
But they're probably looking at it from a future-proofing point of view, ma.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want Meta devices to be added into your platform, good, right? Then you choose platforms, right? So earlier on we talked about platforms, right? Apple, Koble, Tuya, Smart Life. You look for platforms, right, that allow you to add Meta device, right? So in the future, when Meta devices are a lot more stable, they are more readily available, you can always add into this kind of platforms. Yeah. So our platform allow users to add Meta device.
Okay, so what's the word for it? What?
Interoperable.
Interoperable. So look for interoperable platforms. Then you're somewhat future-proof. Okay, cool. And with that, right, I think we've come to the end of this episode of the SIXiDER Show. Today's edition is based on smart home. Again, thank you so much, Eric, as well as Tommy, for joining us. And remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on all our socials. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.